I think the best thing about Colchester...
When people come to visit, they're always pleasantly surprised.
It's Britain's oldest recorded town.
You can get to the sea in 20 minutes.
It's a lovely place to live in.
The best building in Colchester is...
It's got to be Jumbo.
Jumbo Tower, which just symbolises Colchester.
The Roman circus.
the Roman walls.
The castle.
For me, the worst thing about Colchester is the people who moan.
That's forever roadworks.
It took me about 3.5 days to get here.
Because he saw a kangaroo in the road that had escaped from Colchester Zoo.
I don't want to sell it too much because everybody will want to move here.
Absolutely.
It's a nice part of Essex.
Indeed, yeah.
Mark Steele's in town.
Welcome to Mark Steele's in Town, which this week comes from the Essex town of Colchester. A hugely important and prominent town, second in Essex only to Chelmsford and to Southend and Canvey Island. But apart from that, you can't help but get a clear sense that the unofficial motto in Colchester is, we used to be important. Because this is the oldest town in Britain. And you can't help saying, I'm the oldest town in Britain, you know. I go right back to the Romans, I do. Yes, you've told us, Uncle Colchester. I remember when this was all temples round here. Can't we put it in a home? But there are modern institutions here as well. Of course, there is a university and there is an army barracks, because it's a brilliant idea to create a town full of students and soldiers, the perfect mix. You get messages like the one that I was sent on Twitter from someone called Neil when I asked if anyone knew Colchester, and he said, the oldest recorded town in Britain. I got punched in the face by a squaddy on Christmas Eve. One of the joys, I think, of Colchester is you've gone to great lengths to try and blend the feel of the Roman city into the modern town by merging the ancient Roman wall into almost seamlessly into a dual carriageway that goes through the middle of everything. So that if you're on one side and you think, I quite fancy popping the other side to see the castle, it will only take you 8 months. Half of which involves being sat in gridlock traffic 20 yards from where you want to visit. And then all you have to do is park in the multi-storey car park that leads onto the beautiful bridge with breathtaking views of the traffic jam that you've just been stuck in. And this is one of the great advantages of Colchester. It's so easy to drive through. Some of these roadworks have been there for 7 months. What, are they handcrafting the roads? Maybe it takes so long because every time BT try to lay a cable, they go, oh, blimey, we've found another Roman amphitheatre. The Little Book of Essex, which I've got there, was written to promote the many achievements of the county. Achievements such as this one, mentioned on page 1 of the book. Chocolate boxes and biscuit tins carry fewer pictures of Essex than of any other county. Something to be proud of, isn't it? And a shame, because I would imagine that it would put people in the mood for a bit of shortbread to find a tin with a picture of a student being beaten up by a squadron. I've got a book there, Days of Colchester, that says very proudly that an episode of Doctor Who was set in Colchester. And even more proudly it says, this episode was watched by fewer viewers than any other episode. But best of all, you have the universally popular, much-loved beacon of town-wide affection, the new First Sight Art Gallery. Adored by everybody. Indeed, the first review I saw of the First Sight Gallery on TripAdvisor says, the most welcome piece of work is the exit sign. I was walking around it with Anthony, who was managing it, and an old couple came in, and Anthony said, hello, you local? Yes, I am. So Anthony said, have you been here before? And he just went, it's a waste of bloody space, this is. We go to Ipswich now, just so we don't have to look at it. And then he went, and we ain't Ipswich. I mean, I might be being controversial here. I thought it was all right. Yeah. There's an original Roman mosaic there, which you can see under a glass floor. That's something, isn't it? Like, except I thought, oh, probably to local people, that's not as exciting it is to me, because you get bits of Roman mosaic everywhere here, don't you? You probably get into bed some nights and go, what's... Oh, it was a bloody statue of bloody Claudius again under the pillow. Oh, the cat's brought in an amphitheatre. So now we have Anthony here, who was manager of the First Sight Gallery. First of all, so do you remember the encounter with a lovely couple?
I do. I remember that very clearly. A very charming couple they were.
Have they been in?
They haven't been back, but I have been trying to find them in Ipswich, Mark. A pilgrimage up there. Yeah. It has been a little bit of a journey with that venue, but I think we're getting on side with it now a bit more. People do have sort of ideas and misunderstandings about it. I have heard that the Roman wall was pulled down to build it. That's one of the things I heard about it. But we'll get there with it. It's fun.
All right. Thanks very much, Anthony.
Thank
you.
I
liked it. Thank you very much. There's a spirit here of community to look after the neighbourhood. For example, in a normal town, if someone rang... In a normal town, if someone rang the police and said they'd seen a lion... Here, according to the Daily Mirror, when it was reported there was a lion on the loose, experts from Colchester Zoo were called in to help, and the zoo staff armed themselves with tranquilisers and joined the £880 an hour police hunt for the beast, rather than dismiss a blurry shape in a photo for what it was, a domestic cat. But it was an understandable reaction because the person who reported the lion said, I quote, "I heard something and thought it must be a lion." And to be fair, it's better to be safe than sorry, because over the course of a day, when you hear something, usually it's a lion. But it's more believable here than anywhere else that you'd have a lion, because one of your regular boasts is that, according to the tourist brochure, visit Colchester, walk through the streets where Emperor Claudius once rode triumphantly on the first elephant in Britain. For years, the only mention of the elephant from the time was a sentence by someone called Cassius. But recently, an account was discovered that includes an overheard conversation in which a farmer from Alresford said, "I heard something, thought it must be an elephant." The Romans invaded in 43 AD, and as they battled their way around the land, this was where they built their first town, with streets and shops and a temple. They were intending to head for Peterborough originally, but they got stuck in the roadworks on Brook Street. Might as well build the town here. Now they're saying on Radio Essex there's an elephant shed its load. We're stuck. A nearby tribe, the Iceni, or the Iceni. How do you pronounce it? What do you reckon? Iceni. No one knows really, do they? The Iceni. The Iceni of eastern Britain, ruled by Prasutagus and his wife Boudicca, and the Romans needed their land and they needed more slaves, and so they attacked Boudicca and they assaulted her daughters and they forced them to worship the Roman gods. And Boudicca brought together the tribes of the area and she proclaimed, "We fight today for the honour of the Iceni people. For ages yet live, stand proud and valiant, but beware the squaddies in the city centre Christmas Eve." And Boudicca rode to the edge of the Roman town and she set fire to the whole thing. You must be the only people whose hero is someone who destroyed your town. So you remember, she's a hero, isn't she? So in Colchester at the moment, there's a firm called Iceni Plumbers. Are they to be trusted? Oh dear, you've got an airlock in your radiator here. I can try burning down one room to see if that helps. Probably safer to set the whole street alight, I would have thought. The official history of Colchester, the chapter on the rebellion, ends after Claudius and Boudicca. Colchester would never be as important again. How does that make you feel? You're the town equivalent of some singer who had one hit in 1986. You were important again, though, Colchester. It was here that in the 9th century, according to my book, the English chased the Danes away. Then in 1272, there was a... What was it? Does anyone remember? Oh, yeah, someone said the Benedictines. Oh, I got a bit teetery then. Come on, we've done the Benedictines before. You ought to know this. Then in 1272, there was a mass brawl between the people of Colchester and the monks of the abbey. Even your monks go, we're Colchester's Benedictine, you're going to get your heads all kicked in. I can't tell you how proud I was of finding a rhyme for Benedictine. And then you ended up with a Dutch quarter, which is the bit with the pretty blue and pink houses all going down the hill from the high street. But what did the Dutch make of it here? We're very quiet down there, isn't it? It's mostly older couples and not what I imagine people expect from a Dutch quarter. If tourists come here, the odd tourist must go knocking on doors. Any porn, live shows, that sort of thing. Well, there's me and Doris, I suppose. You'll have to wait till she comes back from the chiropodists. But this was all part of Colchester becoming a Protestant town, so you became important again, because it seems to crop up every 800 years or so that you become important. And radicals and Puritans met here, and you supported Cromwell in the Civil War. But there was one critical incident in the history of the Civil War that revolved around the town of Colchester. Patrick here, who's a historian who does a lovely guide around the town that you can go on. What happened then, Patrick, this crucial battle that ended with a siege? And
Well, how long have you got?
Colchester, innit? They're not in a rush.
Well, in 1648, on June the 12th, about 5,000 Roman soldiers, not Roman soldiers, royalist soldiers.
How long have you been a historian? Then in 1581, Elizabeth I met Kylie Minogue, and together they invented the lampshade.
About 5,000 royalist troops entered Colchester. What they didn't realise that 24 hours behind them was Fairfax's army, equal size. Fairfax comes, they're trapped inside the town, they can't get out. Fairfax launches an attack on the town, which results in hundreds of people getting killed. So then he decides what he'll do, he'll besiege the town, and he started building a series of forts and ditches all the way around the town with the purpose of starving them out. So the town finally capitulated and they surrendered. So this churchyard, where we're sitting in now, was named the Royal Fort, and they hoisted a cannon right up into the church tower here.
And so, to anyone outside Colchester, this might sound a dull minor detail of the Civil War, except the name of the cannon, I'm sure you all know this. It was Humpty Dumpty, and I think really anything else that happened in the Civil War is minor tittle-tattle. Compared to this, the cannon was Humpty Dumpty, and at some point someone made a rhyme about it. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. And in a way, I think this is important because it does tell you why the Royalists lost the Civil War. What a stupid idea to try and get the horses to help put a cannon back together. Who did that? Now, I should have asked you this, Patrick. Is it true that that was Humpty Dumpty?
Probably not, unfortunately. And although I'm one of the tour guides and I love telling that story, but right at the end I usually say, well, that's our version.
I think from tonight, not bother telling them it's not true, and then it'll just become true. Thanks very much, Patrick. But this sort of thing had happened before. It keeps happening in Colchester. Astonishing account of nursery rhymes. In the 11th century, there was a legend that St Helena was the daughter of a local ruler called King Cole, and he was supposed to be a merry old soul, and so they wrote a nursery rhyme about him as well. And then in the 1780s, Colchester History, that book, says Isaac Taylor, minister of St Helena's Chapel, was father of children's writers Jane and Anne Taylor, whose most famous poem was Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Every kid's song is connected to Colchester. Or do you make them up? In 100 years, you'll say, back in the 20th century, there was an SOS bus in Colchester, and you know the fascinating thing about it? Its wheels went round and round, and that's where the song comes from. Other towns have pride in predictable things like their celebrities and their football teams, but you're proud of your arsonists and your nursery rhymes, and especially your water tower. Now, the water tower manages to compete with the castle and the town wall, and it's a beautiful piece of Victorian brickwork, a huge arch, and its finest attribute is it's completely useless. Right from the start. Reverend Irving, who lived in the rectory right next to this building, said it blocked his view, and to insult it, he called the tower Jumbo after an elephant that was in London Zoo at the time. There's a chap called Brian I spoke to who helps run the group that campaigns to preserve Jumbo, and he told me everyone in Colchester has an opinion about what Jumbo should be used for. And it's true, everyone you speak to, it should be a high-rise nail bar. It should be a helipad to airlift people out of traffic jams. It should be a car wash, but for giraffes. Here's one suggestion from the local Gazette. A high-level restaurant where on a clear day, diners could see as far as Bradwell Power Station. I'm with that, because too often when you go out to eat, you say, well, the food and the service was all right, but you couldn't see Bradwell Power Station. You fans of Jumbo, though, here? Yeah. I'd like to talk now to Darius. Now, Darius, we met by the extraordinarily tall weeds growing outside Jumbo.
The nettles.
The nettles that are there as a sort of symbol of how much people care about it. And you're campaigning for it to be lit up.
I am. I mean, it's our Eiffel Tower, isn't it? And people going home to Norwich in the evening on the train line look at it and go, wow, what is that? But they can't really see it in the evening, so we should light it up. It's a controversial building now. It was a controversial building when it was built. Every building in Colchester of any magnitude has always been controversial. I mean, Claudius built this temple that no one wanted, and then some guy called William from France built this castle that no one wanted, and you've talked a little bit about first sight, but we're getting there, and we might want it in the end. But we all love Jumbo, ultimately, Mark.
Brilliant. No, that's... Thanks very much, Darius. Thanks. There's fondness for a row here. Does everybody know the bloke who campaigns on his own against stuff? Do you know that bloke? Andy. I saw him today. He's campaigning against the Swingers Club. This is true. It was outside the town hall, and so I sort of crossed over to see what was written on his placard, and there were these two women sat on a bench, and he was stood right next to him. One of them went, he wants to get down that Swingers Club, it might lighten him up a bit. The Victorians in Colchester loved a row. There were plans for a railway through here from London to Norwich, but the money ran out, so it only made it as far as Colchester. So a separate line was built by a different company from Norwich through Cambridge to Colchester, but the two lines were at war with each other, and the connections with the Ipswich train were so bad there was apparently a regular joke in the papers that went, yesterday an 18-year-old was caught at Ipswich travelling on a child's ticket. He said in his defence, but I was only 13 when I left London. And one of the charms of the town is that 170 years later, Greater Anglia Trains do all they can to make sure that joke still makes sense. Another lovely touch that survives from that battle is in Colchester. Unlike in most towns where the station is miserably and predictably near the centre of the town, you have more fun and placed Colchester railway station hardly near Colchester at all. So there are some people who must get to Colchester and find that they're further away than when they started in Stanford-le-Hope. But in a way, this shows the Colchester spirit, because although your most important time was 2,000 years ago, you haven't given up looking for something to revive the old fame. For example, the East Anglian Times boasts the oldest hot cross bun in the world was baked in Colchester. Apparently it's over 200 years old, and of course it means that the nursery rhyme was written here. Kids still say today, the one hot cross buns, we've got the oldest, so bollocks to Chelmsford, hot cross buns. Some parts of your culture here are more like you'd get in other towns. You've got a football team, obviously, that's occasionally made national news. For example, there's a proud boast in one local book. In 1993, Colchester United became the only team in history to have two goalkeepers sent off in the same match. I expect they fought each other because one was from the town and the other was a monk and naturally tempers flared. Now, the ground used to be called Layer Road, as I'm sure you knew, which was in the town, but a few years ago, in the spirit of Colchester's Victorians, it was moved to nowhere near Colchester. There are odd hints that you're slightly bitter about Chelmsford. A few years ago, the Queen awarded Chelmsford status as a city while you were applying for it as well, but you were rejected. The local MP, Bob Russell, responded very graciously to the news that Chelmsford won. He said, "Colchester is much more important than Chelmsford. Colchester was the major town in Britain when Chelmsford was just a Roman little chef." See, it's not North Korea we've got to worry about. But I can see his points, right? Has Chelmsford ever contributed to British culture anything as glorious as the annual St Nicholas event up the road here in Wivenhoe, including the jolly ritual of a white man blacking up as Black Peter, St Nicholas's servant? To be fair, when complaints were made about this, the comments on the Wivenhoe forum were very wise and thoughtful. The first one went, "I've been told Black Peter will have to be painted orange this year. That will only confuse the children." Come on, this is Essex. Children are used to seeing people looking orange, aren't they? Last year, the procession went ahead with no Black Peter for the first time, and I bet there was someone who went, "That's ridiculous. I played Black Peter and I haven't got a racist bone in my body. Not even the one I put through my nose to play the part." It's very pretty, Wivenhoe. We can all agree on that, can't we? There's a harbour, there's beautiful boats, there's very peaceful walks by the riverfront. You're very fond of it, clearly. One person told me, "I very rarely take against a place, but I have really taken against Wivenhoe. They're all up themselves." That's always a sign of affection. There's been talk of a bridge across the river to connect Wivenhoe with Rowbridge, but I've been told the people of Wivenhoe... What is it called? Rowhedge. Rowhedge. Oh, yeah, of course it is. Rowbridge. I was thinking, if there's no bridge, why would it be called a... There's been talk of a bridge across the river, but I've been told the people of Wivenhoe don't want one, as it would mean people in Rowhedge would be able to get to Wivenhoe. But the zoo is brilliantly Colchester because it was started by this couple called Helena and Frank, who collected animals and wanted somewhere to put them. Now, to start with, they became known in Southport because they would take their lion for a walk round the town. Now, already, even if they didn't know it themselves, it was sort of inevitable they'd end up in Colchester, wasn't it? They lived in this flat with the lion and various monkeys. Then in 1963, they were offered land here to open a zoo. But it must have been magnificent. And as the owners got older, even the official history hints at the odd breach of zoo etiquette, as the fences weren't maintained, so the animals started escaping. Now, I know it's a minor quibble, but details like that can make a difference with a zoo. First of all, the porcupines disappeared and turned up 3 miles away in Monkwick Avenue. They'd have got further, but they got lost looking for the station. Then a water buffalo ended up in the Pretty Gate estate, and the police couldn't trap it until someone borrowed a mechanical digger and boxed it in. And then orangutans gave each other... This is all true. Orangutans gave each other a leg up and made it over the wall. Animal behaviour experts believe the orangutans were thinking, "It's gone downhill here, we're going to go to Ipswich." And we hate Ipswich. A teenage boy stole a leopard, and then the book says, I promise is exactly what's written here, it says, "It came as a surprise to Colcestrians when Colchester Zoo was missing from a list of Britain's top zoos." How could there be a worse zoo? Makes me realise the biggest fool in Colchester at the time was anyone who paid money to go to the zoo, as you could give it a week and the animals had come to you. But a bit of the old spirit survives. The book Colchester Days says that in 2012, on January the 28th, the Birds of Prey display went smoothly until someone took a flash photograph of a barn owl. Dazed, the owl flew into the lion enclosure where a lion ate it in one mouthful. And I looked on TripAdvisor and a review says, "Best zoo in the UK. If you're lucky, you get to see lions eating owls." Highly recommended. Eventually, under new owners, it became a bit more compliant with the zoo protocol that the animals are, in general, prevented from popping round to houses in the local community. But what about the wolves? The wolves went missing.
Behind my back garden.
One come into your back garden, a wolf.
They escaped from the zoo and came up into a country park on the edge of Colchester, and they shot them. They shot one of them just behind my fence.
Shot one in your garden. This place is lethal. I don't think Attenborough's ever been to Africa. I think he just comes here, he wanders around. There is again the wolf escaped from the zoo. And here we see it. Its prey, the wildebeest that's escaped from the other side of it. Was it really a wolf, or did you just think, I've heard a noise? It makes sense, though, because you love to surprise Colchester. You're like a Hollywood actress whose most famous films were 2,000 years ago, but they still pop up here and there, and you think, oh, yeah, she's brilliant. I didn't know she was still going. Because it's beautiful here. But the trouble, I think, Colchester, you don't realise. You know, you're better than York and these places that are pretty and they know it. I think, in a way, that you were better off not getting city status, because that's sort of official approval, and I don't think that's what Colchester's about. You're a bit more cult. That's good. Let Chelmsford have its city status. I was talking to somebody I won't name, and I said, to be honest, I find compared to Colchester, Chelmsford can appear quite soulless. And this person said, this is exact words, "You're right, it's where my ex-wife lives and she loves it." So I'll leave you with this, good people of Colchester. Thanks very much. This is why The Only Way Is Essex could never have come from Colchester. Because they did try it here initially, but it's not Essex here. It's a different sort of place. I'll leave you with the only episode they filmed before deciding that The Only Way Is Essex is more suited to the different bit of Essex. Yeah, that Boudica was a right stroppy bird. Can't be doing with it, mate. 1 minute all sweet, next she's giving it all that torch in the place. Here, Joey, do you reckon I could have got off with that Claudius? He had his own elephant and everything. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I had a right laugh last night, right? I've had a right dodgy kebab, right? Needed a bog quick. I'm straight in the art gallery, chucked up of a mosaic. Only won a Turner Prize, ain't I? Here, I'll tell you what, right? I'm coming back from the White Hart last night, right? Here, and this big, tall, lanky muppet squaring up won't get out of my way. I've smacked him one. Chloe goes, "Leave it, Jake, leave it, it's the water tower." Thanks very much.
Mark Steele's In Town was written and performed by Mark Steele with additional material from Peter Sinclair. The producer was Carl Cooper. It was a BBC Studios production.